The Professor's Digital Dojo.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the dojo. So, to do the type of work we need to do, there are a lot of principles that we have to get familiar with, especially if we want to be, you know, elite in Maya or elite animators or media artists or whatever you want to call yourself. So, really quickly, we're going to do a tutorial on something known as displacement maps in Maya. Now, I'm going to create, once again, I'll go to our standby, a polyplatonic solid. I will give it enough subdivisions so that it's spherical. Scale this up a bit just so you guys can see it. And one of the things that is really important to be able to do is to add what we call ground level detail to our models. Now, if I wanted this to look like stone with all of the pits and bits and bobs that stones have, I could of course assign a AI standard surface material. I could give it a gray stone texture, either from one that I have. I'll pull this up as a file. Go to our Maya folder here, and I've got just tons of textures from over the years. And let's look at stone. And so I've got a lot of different stone types. Let's say we wanted to do agate or like a cobblestone. These are some cobblestones I shot in Prague, or some bricks. So let's do these cobblestones right here. And now once I've assigned it on here, if I render it right now, it's not going to look very good. So let's give ourselves a light really quickly. So of course we'll go to our Arnold shelf. We'll put in just a sky dome light, turn that down to 0 to camera, and let's just take a look. This is again not going to look the way we want it, but it'll give us a entry point into talking about how we can make this far more realistic. There we go. All right, so quick render. I realize this might be very small to you guys too, so here we'll pull that up. So there we go. Look at that. We got cobblestones. Now, first things first, I need to UV map this. It's just kind of stuck on there willy-nilly, like so. And that's not too bad. I have a seam right there, and that's pretty common. I'm going to show you guys a workflow that gets rid of those seams. But what we're going to do right now is we are going to UV map this, and that means we're going to get Maya to sort of flatten, as if we were flattening this model out and putting the texture on top of it. And since it's a sphere, we are going to do a spherical UV map. We're going to grab these manipulator handles and make sure it surrounds the entire thing. Now you won't see a huge difference past from the last one, but we're getting a much better fit onto our surface. Now, what I meant is we can give the illusion. I think I'm going to have to add an HDRI really quickly to this sky dome so that we can have a bit more contrast here. And so we'll add that in. And hopefully I've done all of this stuff so often that it's becoming second nature to you guys as well. And I think we'll do this one right here. This is fine. And once again, under color balance, we're going to turn alpha is luminance on. And on the sky dome light itself, down here under viewport, as normal, I turn the sky radius down to 0, just so it's not in the background bothering me. Now, if I were to hit render on this, you can see that we've got this sky dome light. I need to adjust my materials a little bit here, and so we're going to bring the roughness up to something like an actual, flagstone or a brick path would be. It's at this point where I can add the illusion of texture by going into our bump mapping slot and adding either a bump map or a normal map. And so we'll grab a file, and I've already have, notice we're set to bump. We're going to change the bump depth in a second because the default is far too much. But here in our textures under stone, I already have a cobblestone bump map prepared. And so you can see it now gives the illusion of texture. But if we look at the edge, you'll see that it's still perfectly smooth and round. And this is where displacement mapping comes in. Instead of just adding a bump map, which, by the way, we want to adjust this bump depth to like 0.1 to 0.01, something like that, just so that it's not quite so dramatic. However, if I wanted these cobblestones or these paver stones to actually deflect the surface, I need to create what's called a displacement map. And what a displacement map does is it creates more detail at render time as if we modeled this, however it's done using a texture. If I open my Hypershade, you'll see here, I'll expand that out, and we'll map this texture right here. You'll see we have our color going into our base color, and we have our bump map coming into here. What I'd like to do is here in the shader group itself, you'll notice we have a slot for a displacement shader right here, displacement material. I'm going to tick on that and open up our create render node and go to our file browser, and I'm going to put in right here that cobblestone texture that we used for our bump map. Now I could reuse the same one, just plug it in right here. There's a reason I don't want to do that right now. We'll talk about that in a second. Make sure alpha is luminance is checked. And if we rendered it right now, A, we wouldn't see anything happen, and B, if we did, it wouldn't be something that we would want. So we have to make a few adjustments here. The first thing we have to do is under our actual shape node here, we're going to come down to the Arnold tab, and under subdivision and displacement attributes, I'm going to open both of those up. And under subdivision, we're going to switch the type from none to cat Clark. And I'll give it about 4 or 5 iterations. This basically means it's going to subdivide it 5 more times at render time. Now the higher I set this number, the more detail I'll get, but there are rapidly diminishing returns. If I go too high, the render will take too long. If I go too low, I won't get enough detail. 5, 4, 5, those are usually good starting points for us. The next thing is bounds padding. I want to set this to about 10. And then we're going to adjust. Pop over here, and we're going to come to our displacement material right here, and we need to set the alpha offset for this to -0.5. Oops, pardon me guys. Whoops, that's negative 0.5, and we set that every time so that dark values displace negatively and light values displace positively. So now what we're going to do is the last thing we can set the scale, and I generally recommend to start at about 0.1 and work your way up from there. Okay, so now we have our shader set up. Let's hit render, and you can see that the shader itself has now displaced these bricks. I didn't have to model it. It's going to look very nice and realistic. If I put this back at 1, you'll see that it's a massive amount of displacement, too much. So let's do 0.008. So there you go, 0.1. And this allows us to create a texture or a surface that has realistic sort of displacement. Well, I'm using the same word in the definition. However, it's utilizing a texture that we've mapped to it. I'll make it a little simpler. Let's look at it this way. I'll save that. We'll do it with a plane. We'll use the exact same textures, polygon, primitive plane. Now generally if I'm doing this sort of workflow, I want to give the plane some decent resolution to start with, so let's just start at 50/50. Remember, this will get subdivided more as we change down here. Under our shape node, again, we come to subdivision, we change none to Catmull-Clark, and we'll give this about 5. Next, I do want to assign my shader material, AI standard surface. Give it a little bit of roughness. We will assign that texture. Here we go. And here we go, cobblestones. from Prague. And then I do want to UV map these. I need to make sure that everything fits the way it's supposed to. We'll do a planar map on this right here. That'll be fine. And now I am going to map this out. There we go. And you can see where that's, but I don't have anything in the displacement. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our displacement material, create a render node, and I'm just going to go retrieve this again from textures here, stone, and I have one that's high contrast. This generally serves us pretty well for a displacement map. We'll set our alpha offset to -0.5. Okay. Oh, one other thing. Let me close this. We need to go over and let's remember that we need to set our scale to about 0.1. And now let's do a quick render of our viewport here. And you'll see, down here. Sorry guys. Wah. Oh, it'd be nice if I put a light in, wouldn't it? There we go. So let's put a light in. There we go. Oh. Now you can see that's displacing the heck out of it. That is far too much displacement. So let's move over and let's set our displacement to about 0.01. We can go even lower. And hopefully you can see now how the texture is actually displacing the surface and creating new geometry. This is still a little bit harsh. I think 0.0, let's say 8 would be about where I'd go. And there you go. This creates a realistic texture, creates actual displaced geometry. So that, in a nutshell, a quick and easy tutorial on displacement mapping. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.